Hello, and thank you for joining us for the weekend edition of Stories of Great Christians. When we last left our hero last year in Chapter 7, we're now in Chapter 8 of the story of George W. Truett. He was the father of the founder of CHIK-FIL-A, who was the grandfather of the current owners and the family of Kathy Truett. Not known up in the hills country boy that became a Baptist preacher. Well, without further ado, let's listen to the story. Tell us what you think. Hit subscribe, leave a comment. Here we go.
We greet our friends everywhere with Chapter 8 of Forced to Preach, the life story of George W. Truett. This is another in the series Stories of Great Christians, and is brought to you by the Moody Bible Institute of Chicago.
When the First Baptist Church of Dallas called George unanimously, without officially hearing him preach, he wanted to tell them no. And when he went to Dallas and found out they were fretting so much over their $12,000 debt that they hadn't taken a missionary offering in years, he was sure he was going to say no. But he looked around the city, growing up as fast as a family of prairie jackrabbits, and at the church itself, with 715 loyal members, he decided that this was the spot where God wanted him. But he knew it wouldn't be easy. 2 weeks after he came to Dallas, he took up his first missionary offering. Right along, he kept insisting on putting the salvation of the world first, and fretting over personal debts last. And you know, inside of 2 years, that debt was paid off. George was pushing himself too hard, and finally I was able to convince him to take some time off for himself. He and the Dallas police chief, J.C. Arnold, started out on a hunting trip.
Ever been to Cleburne before, George?
No, I haven't. And I know Dr. Baines. We met at Waco.
Oh, yes. That's a nice church here. He's supposed to meet us. Hey, there he is now.
Where?
Over by the clock. He's coming this way. And would you look at that outfit?
I wouldn't have recognized him.
In spite of the clothes, Dr. Baines is a right good hunter.
Yeah, about time you fellas got here. The quail will be in Mexico before you know it.
Couldn't hurry the train none, Doctor. You should know that.
Howdy, Truett. Good to see you.
Thank you.
I've got a carriage outside.
Carriage? I thought we were going by horseback.
Yeah, well, we'll take the carriage about 12 miles and then pick up our horses.
We're really going into the wilds then, huh?
Yeah, you might say that. It's good hunting. My wife ordered a dozen quail. Can't disappoint her. But, here, Brother Truett, excuse me. I've been talking nothing but hunting. Welcome to Cleveland. How are you?
Just fine, thank you. Anxious to get started.
And you, J.C.?
You know me. I have a choice between chasing criminals or quail. I'll pick quail anytime. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll get my hound dogs out of hock. Get a whiff of that air, Pastor. Mighty clean and nice.
Brother Baines, would you mind if I asked you something?
Well, no. What is it?
Don't call me Brother Truett. George is just as good, and, well, I'd like it better.
Well, it sure is. You call me George, too.
The only trouble with that is, in case of emergency, we'll get all tangled up calling each other.
That's right. Well, let's keep it simple. No fancy titles. We're just a bunch of boys off on a hunting spree.
There's your your gun, George.
Well, thanks, J.C.
Say, where in the world did you get that antique hunting piece, J.C.?
Oh, I've had it around. It works fine, too. I checked it just before I left home. One thing, there's no safety catch on it, so you'll have to be a little extra careful.
It won't go off by itself.
Oh, no, don't worry, George. A Texas Ranger doesn't loan a man a bum gun.
Well, now we'd better decide on our direction.
Well, let's keep about 15 paces apart. The wind's about north and northwest. Let's head straight north. I'll lead the way. You follow me, George. And Dr. Baines, George, you bring up the rear. You all set? Let's go.
You've been pretty lucky, George.
Yeah, 7 birds so far. Good ones, too. Look.
Mm-hmm.
What's your score?
3.
Oh, well, you'll do better.
George, I don't like the way this gun is acting. As soon as I touch the trigger, it fires. I don't even have to use any pressure on it.
Let's see it, George. Load it?
No.
That's almost a hair trigger. Where's J.C.?
About 100 yards ahead.
Let's ask him about it. It's his gun. Hey, better load up. Look at that covey coming toward us.
What's the matter, fellas? Can't you keep up with me?
This gun, J.C., it's not working right.
Well, let's see it.
Here, take a look at it. It's loaded now. Be careful. Watch out.
What's the matter?
Here, let's help. I'm all right, I guess. Here, take a look at this leg of mine. The right one.
Sit down now. Let's lift this trouser leg.
The calf of your leg is bleeding pretty bad.
Yes.
Here, I'll tear my handkerchief. Hope this stops the flow of blood. In pain, J.C.?
No, I'm all right. It looks worse than it is now. Yeah, this happened to me once before. Except then, it was a bullet. This bird shot won't do much damage. How'd it happen?
George's gun's been acting up. We wanted to show
Yeah,
you.
but what made it go off?
I don't know. I didn't even touch the trigger. Now, look here. J.C., are you sure you're all right?
Oh, sure. Don't worry about me. Shouldn't have brought that old gun after all. Looks like... I think maybe you fellas ought to get me to a doctor, though.
George, stop pacing the floor. People are watching you.
Leave me alone, Joe.
Oh, I think you're being downright silly. Here, sit down on this bench with me.
I can't help it, Joe. I feel J.C.'s going to die. I just feel it.
Nonsense. The doctor at Cleveland said that wound wasn't serious. Mrs. Arnold told you that.
I know, but... Oh, you wouldn't understand.
Now look, George, this is the best hospital in Dallas. The doctor isn't worried. Why should you be?
Because I was holding that gun.
It was an accident.
Of course it was an accident. That doesn't change the way I feel.
Well, how do you feel?
I feel he's going to die.
George, here's J.C.'s doctor now, coming down the hall.
Well, Reverend Truett, waiting to pay a pastoral call at this time of night?
How is he, Doctor?
Oh, a little annoyed at the Baptist minister that baptized him with buckshot.
Is he going to live?
Reverend Truett, right now J.C. Arnold is laughing his head off about getting a well-deserved and long overdue vacation. Go right on in to see him.
You sure it's all right?
Well, if you don't visit him today, you may not see him at all.
What?
I'm sending him home tomorrow morning. Go on in, Reverend Truett.
George, I want one thing understood.
Yes, J.C.
Don't blame yourself for this crazy accident.
I do. I should have been more careful with that gun.
That gun shouldn't have gone off. You blame anybody, blame me. Old Texas Ranger should have checked his guns more carefully.
J.C., you're great to say
George,
that, but...
We've been friends a long time already.
That's right.
So don't let this get you down. Man, you've got a lot of work to do for the Lord. Don't go watering down your efficiency by worrying over old J.C. Arnold's leg, you hear me?
Sure, J.C. Sure. Souls are more important than legs.
Now, that sounds more like you, George.
Sure, J.C. Sure.
Another cup of coffee, George.
No, thanks. I've had enough.
You've had half a cup. The other half is sitting right there getting cold.
Maybe I just don't want any.
Going down to the church this morning?
I can't help it, Joe. I know you think I'm being foolish.
I do.
But I just can't get rid of this awful feeling that something's going to happen to J.C. It's a feeling, that's all.
But he's going back to work tomorrow.
I know. I'm not being logical.
I think you've been working too hard, and this worrying is a natural result. Oh, now who's that?
I'll get it.
All right, I'll start clearing off the table. Who was it, George? George, what's wrong? George, what is it?
Joe, that was Colonel Williams. J.C. Arnold died this morning.
Reverend Truett, I'd like to take a few minutes of your time.
Sit down, Doctor. I'll have Josephine bring in some coffee.
Never mind, Reverend. Your wife tells me you're punishing yourself over J.C. Arnold's death.
It was my fault.
It wasn't.
I think it was.
Reverend Truett, I'm here to tell you that it wasn't.
I know what happened.
What?
I held that gun.
What do you think killed the man?
Well, I know. My shot. Blood poisoning, I suppose.
Reverend Truett, there was no blood poisoning. Arnold was my patient. You remember I told you he was all right that night in the hospital?
Yes,
Well, I don't fool around with diagnoses or patients, Reverend Truett. J.C. Arnold was all right that night. And before I dismissed him from the hospital, I saw that wound was going to heal nicely.
I don't understand.
Coronary thrombosis.
What?
J.C. had a weak heart. He didn't know it. He hadn't been to me for a checkup in years, and I didn't know it. But all that rushing around, getting ready for the hunting trip, the trip on the train...
I can hardly believe this.
I understand you even rode part of the way by horseback.
Yes, we did.
That's it. It all added up, and took its toll.
The shot didn't help.
Reverend Truett, how can I hammer this into your head? Your shot did not kill Arnold. You've got to get that out of your mind. You've got your wife all upset, and the church people, too.
I know.
Your wife tells me the church is having a prayer meeting for you right this minute. Now, you're their pastor. You got to preach to them this Sunday. Now, get a hold of yourself.
Doctor, I don't think I'll ever be able to preach again.
You Chapter 8 of Forced to Preach, the story of George W. Truett. This has been another in the series Stories of Great Christians, transcribed from the radio studios of the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago.
the devil. You know, God calls a man to ministry, and he sure needs a rest once in a while, takes a vacation, and therefore an accident occurs and he feels guilty the rest of his life. I hope that's not the case. Perhaps you'll join me tomorrow, to Lord willing, of course, to listen to Chapter 9 of the story of George W. Truett, Baptist minister from Dallas, Texas, whose kin, or children, became the owners of what you know today as Chick-fil-A. Till next time, may the Lord keep me around, keep you around, may the Lord tarry, and if he does, I pray many souls are brought into the kingdom, primarily by you bearing some fruit, as well as me, of course, through the Holy Spirit helping us. And if the Lord wills, I'll see you tomorrow. God bless. Have a great day.